What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's video is brought to you by our new channel sponsor, International MTG. If you're looking for competitive pricing on your favorite MTG cards, old and new, be sure to check out the International MTG store and TCG Player, link in the description of this video. This week on Not Your Average Meta, we're bringing you a game we filmed a couple weeks ago down at the Hobby Horse before we took our holiday break. We'd also like to shout out our second full-time channel sponsor for Season 3, the Hobby Horse. If you're ever in the central Illinois area, be sure to stop in and check out the store as well as saying hi to Martin. This week's matchup features Foil playing Minthara, Merciless Soul from the Commander Legend Boulder's Gate set, CJ playing his newly built Wort the Raidmother Conspire deck, Fog Raw playing his modified Tyranid Swarm deck being led by Zegana Utopian Speaker, and Justin playing his 5-color Myojin deck being led by Jodah Archmage Eternal. Now that we have our fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck will come out on top. Turn 1, Foil plays a Fabled Passage, then cracks it while he passes. CG plays a Firelit Thicket. Fog plays an Island. Justin plays a tapped Frontier Bivouac. Foil plays a Caves of Kolios, then casts an OG Bob. CJ plays a Forest. Fog plays a Forest. Justin plays a tapped Opulent Palace. Foil reveals the top card of his library and loses 2 life before drawing for turn. He then plays a tapped Thriving Heath, choosing black. Foil then casts a Night's Whisper, which has him losing 2 life and drawing 2 cards. CJ plays a Carplusian Forest, then casts a Goblin and Necromancer. Fog plays another Forest, then casts a Commander Sphere. Justin plays Shizo's Death Storehouse before casting a Rampant Growth to go get a land from his library. Foil reveals the top card of his library but doesn't lose any life before it draws for turn. He then plays a Plains for turn and casts a tapped Charcoal Diamond. CJ plays another Forest. Fog plays another Forest and casts a Gilded Lotus. He then uses his Lotus to cast a Harrow, which has him sacking Forest in order to go get 2 islands from his library. Justin plays a Mountain, then taps out to cast his commander, Jodah. Foil reveals the top card of his library but doesn't lose any life before it draws for turn. He then plays a Swamp and casts his commander, Minthara, as well as casting Jodah, Ghoul Caller of Nephilium. CJ casts a Hordling Outburst, which creates him 3 Goblin tokens. Fog plays a Force for turn, then casts a Turvagon when X is equal to 5, drawing off the Ravenous trigger. Fog then casts his commander Zegana, which has him drawing another card when she enters. Justin plays a tapped Savage Lands and pays Wooburg to cast a Myojin of Towering Might. Foil reveals the top card of his library but doesn't lose any life before it draws for turn. He then casts Ashnod's Altar before sacking a zombie to help him cast Tokasia's Welcome. Foil then plays an Orzhov Basilica, which has him bouncing a land back to his hand, before he then creates another token. The Sin gains him an experience counter and draws him a card off his token entering. CJ plays a Molten Birth, which has him rolling a dice. He then fails his dice roll and only creates 2 red elemental tokens. Fog plays a Force for turn to cast a Sporocyst, where X is equal to 5. He then draws off his Ravenous trigger before it goes to get 5 tapped lands from his library. Fog then swings his Turvagon at CJ, which has him dealing 5 damage and creating 5 Tyranid tokens. Justin plays a tapped Mystic Monastery and passes. Foil reveals the top card of his library but doesn't lose any life before it draws for turn. He then plays a Swamp and casts a Court of Grace before creating a zombie token and drawing a card on his end step. CJ draws and casts a Young Pyromancer. Fog plays an island and floats a mana before sacking his sphere to draw a card. He then casts Rishkar, putting a +1/+1 counter on 2 of his creatures. Fog then casts a Horseback, where X is equal to 5. He then draws off the Ravenous trigger and pays to adapt his commander, putting 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Fog then swings a token at Foil in order to become the Monarch, which has him drawing a card on his end step. Justin plays a tapped Sandsteep Citadel, then pays Wooburg to cast a Progenitus. Foil reveals the top card of his library and loses 8 life before drawing for turn. He then plays the Plains and casts a Callous Blood Mage, choosing to draw a card and lose a life. He then draws an additional card off the Blood Mage entering play. Foil then sacks his Blood Mage to his altar to help cast a Sun Titan, which he then uses to bring back his Blood Mage, choosing to draw a card and lose another life. He then creates a zombie on his end step, draws a card, and gains another experience counter. CJ casts Krinko's Command, which creates him 2 red goblins, before also casting Spore Swarm to create 3 Sapperling tokens. Fog casts an Explorer in order to play an additional land and draw a card, before he then casts a Rampant Growth to go get another land from his library. Fog then casts a Tyrant Guard, where X is equal to 5. He then draws off the Ravenous trigger and casts a Thought Vessel. Fog then goes to combat, swinging all his available creatures at Justin. Justin blocks Zegana with his Progenitus, which has Fog sacking his Tyrant Guard to give his creatures indestructible. Justin plays a Fabled Passage for turn that casts a Prismara command in order to draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and create a treasure token. He then sacks his passage to go get an island before casting a Brainstorm in order to draw 3 cards and put 2 back on top of his library. Justin then casts an Amulet of Vigor in a Time of Need, which gets countered by Fog with a negate. Foil creates a Spirit, then reveals the top card of his library but doesn't lose any life before he draws for turn. He then casts Teferi's Protection before he then casts Ondu Inversion, destroying all the non-land permanents in play. CJ casts a Roiling Regrowth, which has him sacking a forest in order to go get 2 lands from his library to put into play tap. Fog casts a Ravener where X is equal to 5. He then draws off the Ravenous trigger before he recasts his commander again, drawing another card. Fog then casts a Farseek to go get an island to put into play, before sending his Tyranid tokens at CJ for 5 damage. He then ends his turn drawing a card. Justin plays a tapped Ice Tunnel for turn that pays to recast his commander a second time. Foil creates a Spirit, then reveals the top card of his library but doesn't lose any life before he draws for turn. He then goes to combat, swinging 2 of his Spirits at Fog in the air, and in response, Fog bounces Foil's commander back to his hand that takes his 2 damage. Foil then becomes a Monarch and recasts his commander. He then creates a zombie, adds an experience counter, and draws on his end step. CJ plays a mountain, then taps out to cast his commander, Wort the Raidmother, getting 2 goblin tokens. Fog plays a force for turn that casts a Mana Thrope, exiling his own graveyard, and a Trigon Prime. He then adapts his commander and goes to combat, swinging his tokens and Ravener foil in order to become the Monarch again. Foil then blocks Fog's biggest creature, which sends both of the creatures to the graveyard, and he takes the rest of the damage. He then passes turn and draws on his end step. Justin plays an untapped Watery Grave, paying the 2 life. Foil creates a Spirit that reveals the top card of his library, losing 3 life before he draws for turn. He then casts a Felidar Guardian, which he uses to flicker his Sun Titan so he can bring his Callous Blood Mage back into play. He then picks to lose a life and draw a card before he plays a Wayfarer's Bauble. Foil then casts a Plaguecrafter, which gets countered by Justin with a Sinister Sabotage. Justin then surveils 1 card into his graveyard while Foil cracks his Bauble. CJ plays a Razor's Ring and casts a Dire Strain Rampage, conspiring it to get a second copy. He then sacks 2 of his lands in order to go get 4 more from his library. Fog plays a Forest and casts a Mind Stone. He then pays to crack the Mind Stone to draw a card. Fog then goes to combat and swings his Trigon Prime at CJ while he swings Zegana at Justin, making her unblockable and adding another +1/+1 counter to her. CJ and Justin both take their damage while Fog draws on his instep from being the Monarch. Justin draws and casts a Chromatic Lantern. On his instep, Foil casts an Acrobatic Maneuver, which he uses to flicker his Sun Titan so he can bring back his Plaguecrafter to play. Each player then sacks a creature while Foil draws a card. Foil creates his Spirit then reveals the top card of his library and loses 4 life before he draws for turn. He then casts a pair of Swiftfoot Boots, which he then equips to his commander. Foil then casts a Dispark to exile Justin's creature before he swings out at him, taking him out of the game. CJ casts a Gelatinous Genesis, conspiring it, creating 4/4/4 Ooze tokens. Fog plays another Force for turn that casts a Gargoyle Flock and a Venom Throat before he goes to combat, swinging his commander at Foil for 9 commander damage. He then creates a 1/1 Tyranid token and draws on his instep. Foil creates a Spirit and reveals the top card of his library and loses 2 life before he draws for turn. He then casts Kaya's Wrath, which once again destroys all the creatures in play, while Foil gains 13 life. Foil then casts a Karma Guide, returning a Sun Titan to play, which then allows him to return Bob to play. He then equips the boots to Bob and passes. CJ pays to recast his commander a second time, creating 2 goblin tokens. On his instep, Fog cycles an Ash Barrens to go get a basic land from his library. Fog plays a Forest and passes. Foil creates a Spirit then reveals the top card of his library, losing 3 life before he draws for turn. He then lets his Karma Guide die while he casts Esper Sentinel. Foil then recasts his commander into Vesperlark, drawing a card. CG casts a Giant's Immolating Inferno, conspiring it, where X is equal to 7. He then targets Foil Sentinel and Foil himself, and in response with his last dying breath, Foil casts Utter End to exile Wort. CJ then puts the rest of the triggers on Fog, taking him down to 10 life. Fog plays a Temple of Mystery, scrying a card to the top of his library. He then recasts Zegana a third time before casting a Genestealer Patriarch. CJ draws and plays a Forest, then casts a Double Vision and a Change of Fortune, which then gets countered by Fog with an Arcane Denial. On his end step, Fog pays to adapt his commander once again. Fog plays an Exotic Orchard return to cast a Tezzeret's Gambit, drawing 2 cards and proliferating his counters on his commander. He then goes to combat swinging both his creatures at CJ, putting an Infection counter on one of CJ's tokens. CJ then blocks a Genestealer and takes a 9 commander damage. Fog then casts a Biophagus and draws on his end step from being the Monarch. CJ knows he's dead to commander damage on Fog's next turn, so he draws for turn and concedes the game. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.